you choose your pictures, you choose your captions. Tell me a little bit about that process and why it was important.
When I did my original, my first big oil book was the second, really, The Prize. We had a photo gallery, and it was because of the photo gallery that it became a PBS, BBC series that like 20 million people saw. Mm-hmm. And so I've just learned it was really important to use the photos as another way to tell the story. And not just boring photos of people standing there like that, but really interesting photos with things going on. And then those need to be integrated so that the captions, everyone has a punch to it that connects back to the book. And so you can almost follow the story by looking at the pictures and get drawn into it and say, wow, this is really interesting. So I see the pictures and the captions as a very integral part of the book, not just to sort of addendum there to illustrate something, but they're part of the story.
I thought we could walk through a few of the pictures and you can kind of say what the picture is and how it relates to the book. These two pictures, the gentleman on the left and the diagram, can you kind of explain shale and what this all is?
So the one on the right, just to explain it, is what a shale well is. It drills down 2,000 feet and then might go 2 miles horizontally. And that was the breakthrough to be able to take this very dense rock that all the textbooks said you can't produce oil and gas from it, figure out how to do it with what we heard, that term fracking, hydraulic fracturing, and then got horizontal wells. So these are very high tech, and you need really advanced computer digital capabilities to do it. So the guy on the left who's pointing there is a guy named George P. Mitchell. That is one stubborn guy. He was the one who had this idea that you could get shale gas and then it turned out oil out of the rocks. And people said, you're crazy, you're wasting your money. He said, well, it's my money. He owned the dominant position in his company. It took 18 years before they finally had 16 years till the breakthrough and then another few years. And I remember talking to his granddaughter and she said, one quality he has, he was really stubborn. And if he hadn't been stubborn, most companies would have said, this isn't going anywhere, let's close it down, waste of money. He got a lot of criticism even internally, but he said, I know this has to work somehow. And it worked to the degree that the US has gone from importing 60% of its oil, and you see the impact of that, when you went to buy gasoline, to where we're now the world's largest oil producer. Pretty amazing. And
he also, as you pointed out in the book, was very much an environmentalist, that he went into this wanting to, stop coal and other things.
Yeah, he created this sort of garden community called the Woodlands outside Houston. And so he was very much, he saw natural gas as preferable to coal. Once out of the blue, I got a phone call from him. I hadn't said anything, but somehow he said, he thought I'd said something about coal, and he was, natural gas is a cleaner fuel. And what we've had in our, the US today, our CO2 emissions are down to the levels of the 1990, although our economy's doubled. And it's largely because natural gas has replaced coal in electric generation. And so that's kind of where it all started.
And then you move through a lot of information about the U.S. and where we're at. And then you kind of jump into Russia. And I just threw this picture in because I thought it was kind of funny.
This guy is a guy who won a judo championship when he was about 25. And in the Leningrad Evening News, they said, you're going to hear more from him. Well, we have heard more from him. It's Vladimir Putin. And I think of him in international affairs as a judoist. He has a weak hand. Russia's economy is only somewhat bigger than Spain's, but he takes advantage of other people's weaknesses to advance. And so I think what he does people think of Russia as a chess player. I think as the Russians called him, a judoist. And I think he applies judo in international affairs. And he's punching above, or he's punching or throwing, I guess in this case, of his weight.
And this shot here with pipeline.
Oh, those are the good old days when it was okay to build a pipeline from Russia under the Baltic Sea to Germany. It was called Nord Stream 1, and there's Chancellor Merkel and then Russian President Medvedev, and they're turning the pipe to open it up. And this was considered a contribution to energy security to bring more clean natural gas. Today, it's point of this Nord Stream 2, which is a current pipeline, $11 billion, 3 weeks from being finished. The US put sanctions on it last December, and it's become a huge contention between Russia and the United States, and very divisive in our relationship with Germany right now. And it's front and center in this whole issue of sanctions and Russian interference in the US presidential elections and all those other factors. So those were happy days. You wouldn't see a photo like that today.
Nope. And this about China and Putin.
Yeah, so there's Putin with Xi Jinping, who's the president of China, and showing them, Putin is showing them how to make Russian pancakes, which are called blinis. And these guys have developed a really close relationship, so much so that on Xi's birthday, Putin brought him his favorite flavor of Russian ice cream. But at the same time that they were cooking up their pancakes, they were cooking up something much bigger, which Chinese troops for the first time were participating in a massive Russian military war games. And the relationship between Russia and China has gotten much closer, based partly on energy, partly on tensions with the United States, partly on the nature of their regimes. And the two they describe each other as each other's best friends. And a real geopolitical reality is this new relationship between Russia and China, which is something that matters a lot, will matter a lot in the future to the United States. But they're going to continue to cook together.
I find it funny that Jackie Chan makes it into the book. So if you want to...
I want to make a prediction here, Carey, that this will be the only book on energy and geopolitics and climate that has Jackie Chan. Why is Jackie Chan in this book? Is because China has this great $1.4 trillion project they call the Belt and Road, to make the Middle Kingdom, the middle of the world economy, to make China central through Central Asia, South Asia, into Europe, into Africa, even in a discussion that President Xi had with the president of Panama, even the Panama Canal. But it's not only a geopolitical and energy, a strategic thing, it also has an aesthetic side to it. So there's a Belt and Road Film Festival. And in that film festival, this movie was one of the starring attractions, which is a movie called Kung Fu Yoga. And it's about a Chinese and Indian archaeologists who together discover, in their cooperation, a great treasure. And Jackie Chan is the professor in it. And the line, it says there, they said, it's so great, our cooperation. And the lady archaeologist from India says, it would also be in line with the One Belt, One Road policy. And I think it's Jackie Chan says, so well said. So it's a way to demonstrate that the Belt and Road has many dimensions, and it's something that's a very important feature of what's happening in global politics.
This is an interesting thing about China, and you want to kind of explain this story?
Again, it strikes me so often that big breakthroughs sometimes come out of big organizations, sometimes come out of one guy. This guy's called Malcolm McLean, and he grew up in a town in North Carolina called Shoe Heel, North Carolina. And he ran a trucking business, and he was moving goods from the East Coast, driving down to Texas. He said, there has to be a cheaper way to do it. What about driving the truck body right onto a ship and having a ship do it? And that became what is known as container shipping. So what you're seeing in the other picture is a container ship. And these are a huge, massive ship going into Shanghai's harbor. And this is what made China so central in the world economy, made China the workshop of the world, because all these containers come to Long Beach, California, or Los Angeles, or New York, or Savannah, and so forth, and connect China to the world. This is kind of what really made the kind of modern globalization as we have now have it, when you have so much from China when you shop either online or in the store. And it's because of container shipping, because it made it economic to move cargoes. Because normally you used to have a lot of guys, longshoremen, who would lift and pull and do things. Now, just those containers get hoisted from the back of a truck or a train, put on the ship, move 5,000 miles across the ocean, Another hoist takes them off, and they end up in at Walmart.
Wow. And China is literally building islands.
Yes. So there's a body of water called the South China Sea, which is south of China, off Southeast Asia, and it is the most important highway for world commerce. 1/3 of world commerce flows through it. China claims the South China Sea basically as its own. And it has a map that it calls a 9-line map, saying for historic reasons, this has always been China. The US doesn't accept that. All the countries, Vietnam, Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines around it don't accept it, but China has moved in and on a group of islands has built up 3,200 acres, reclaimed 3,200 acres, and turned them into basically floating aircraft carriers. Those are runways that can take bombers on them. And the US is challenging this. China is worried, particularly one thing China really doesn't like is the US Navy and the US Navy's freedom of seas, because it says if there's a controversy over Taiwan or something else happens, the US could interrupt their flow of oil, among other things. And so they've built this up, and the US doesn't accept it. And although people don't realize it, there have been several near collisions of US and Chinese warships exactly because of the different views of the South China Sea. So to me, one of the things I wanted readers to know is if you say, where might more serious problems come in world affairs, it could come in the South China Sea, which is not on most people's mindset right now. But keeping it, looking at what's happening there tells you that there's basically a military buildup in that region.
Yeah. And obviously we tend to think of Saudi Arabia as this and the Arab world as the center point of oil, but it's not so much anymore.
Right now, Saudi Arabia shares the dais with the United States and with Russia. So on the left is Mohammed bin Salman, who's the crown prince who really runs the country, sitting under his picture of his grandfather, Abdulaziz ibn Saud, who created modern Saudi Arabia. It only became a real country in 1932. And Mohammed bin Salman will be the next king when his father, in that picture there, passes away. And one of the things that's happened is that Russia has developed a kind of strategic relationship with Saudi Arabia. So this is when Putin was visiting in October, just a year ago, actually, a state visit. And as a gift, they love falconry in the Arab world, brought him, of course, the world's largest type of falcon, which is an Arctic falcon. Mm. And you can see King Salman was very happy to receive this as his present. I forgot the name of the falcon, but it kind of signifies their relationship. So it was a Siberian falcon in Saudi Arabia.
And in the book, you kind of move out of this geopolitical conversation and start talking about technology. This picture kind of illustrates that notion of how technology also drives these issues. Kind of want to explain.
Yes. So, Carey, we are in an energy transition. The energy mix is changing. A lot of debate about the change of it, and I try and have a framework for thinking about energy transition. The term is clean energy, wind and solar. And I wanted to convey that energy transitions have been going on for a long time. And it was in the 14th, it sort of began in the 13th and 14th century when the price of wood went through the roof in England and people started using coal for heating. But I date the beginning of the energy transition that we're still living through to January of 1709. This is a village called Colebrook Dale in Shropshire in England. And there was an iron worker there named Abraham Darby, and he figured out how to use coal to make iron in an improved process over burning wood. And so I say, Colebrook Dale is really when the energy transition began. And here we are in the year 2020, and we're still in energy transition. We went from coal to oil, natural gas, nuclear. The interesting thing is how long it was that, 19th century Britain ruled the waves, their ship, coal, steam, and everything. It wasn't until until the beginning of the 20th century that coal actually became half of world energy supply. Oil was discovered in the U.S. in 1859. It wasn't until the 1960s that coal took over from oil took over from coal. So so that's part of the discussion today about how fast energy transitions can happen, and I'd say in a sense being realistic about it.
And some of the technologies, these are four different people on the same topic.
Right. Well, the two people on the left, I think the left, the two people with the top one is Thomas Edison with his electric car. And he put a lot of money and effort into getting an electric car, never gained traction. And then down below is a reincarnation of Thomas Edison, Elon Musk, who, that's one of those stories, if he hadn't gone to a fish restaurant in the early 2000s and met some guys who wanted to talk about an electric airplane and an electric car, maybe we'd never have the Tesla, and would still, electric car would still be back with Thomas Edison. But so that, I just like the photograph because you saw it was like a century apart, but you saw one great innovator and then another. On the other side is Mary Barra, who is the CEO and chairman of General Motors. And I had a conversation and I interviewed Mary for the book. And she says that her goal for General Motors is zero collisions, zero congestion, and zero emissions. So GM, like others, is moving towards an electric car. Combine it, we'll get to ride hailing. And the guy below him is Mr. Wang, who was the father of the electric car in China. He was Minister of Technology, and he's really pushed it. And China is where you have half the world's electric cars now. So I think he and Elon Musk are really the two, if we said the fathers of the modern electric vehicle, it's those two guys.
Okay. And obviously that's going to have a huge impact on the energy industry and everything about it.
Yes, and the automobile industry.
Yeah. And then these two guys at the Eiffel Tower.
Well, those are two guys at the Eiffel Tower who happened to be there and had this idea that you could, you didn't have to hail a taxi. You could do it on your iPhone. And they went up there and talked about how to do it. Do you need to own the cars, or do you just need to have the software to do it? And everybody, would be self-employed. And they're the two founders of Uber. And they got stuck in a snowstorm, nowhere to go. They went up to the top of the Eiffel Tower and, kind of hammered out the idea for Uber. So I love the picture.
And then, you've talked about renewable and solar and wind, and these are just from China.
Well, we've had a shale revolution I talked about. We've had a solar revolution. The cost of solar panels like down 85%. And a lot of that is because of Chinese manufacturing scale and juggernaut and power. And this is in China, where they're putting the panels on the roof. And China provides 70% of the world's solar panels, and Chinese companies elsewhere another 10%. So China is very well positioned in solar energy. And that fall in costs has taken something that was not competitive and made it very competitive now.
And in the last picture, you mentioned it's the last chapter of the book. This is kind of a scary picture. Those are all full tankers. Yeah,
those oil tankers that when the economic dark age descended and businesses weren't running and people were staying home and no one was on the road and commuting, you had this flood of oil that was coming in. And those were all tankers off the coast of Los Angeles that simply couldn't unload the oil because there was no place to put the oil. And it was that then led to this thing where the U.S. really brokered a deal to stabilize the oil market, which would have been kind of unthinkable. And, prices are still low, but now there are places to put the oil. But, a lot of people most people are still not commuting.